A warm good afternoon, on and all joined. Welcome to our GKNM Hospital, G. Kuppuswamy Naidu Memorial Hospital through Zoom. On behalf of the Department of Nursing Service, I welcome you to our webinar, Patient Safety, What Nurse Can Do. First of all, I thank our management, our superiors, for giving us the opportunity to conduct the webinar in this hospital. Before we proceed, everyone joined with us, you will notice that you are on mute. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please write them in the chat section below the panel and will be answered at the end of the session. Now, I invite our Chief Nursing Officer, Mrs. Girija, to address. Please, ma'am.
Good evening, one and all present here. Welcome to GKNM Hospital. GKNM Hospital was established in the year of 1952 with 50 bedded free maternity and child care hospital. Now we have grown up to 610 bedded hospital with multi-speciality tertiary care referral center accredited with NABH. Now we have entered in the 8th decade. The World Safety Day is celebrated on 17th September every year. This year, our Department of Nursing Services organized a webinar on patient safety, what nurse can do today. I wish the team all the best for the presentation. Now, I'll take great opportunity to introduce our moderator, Professor Mrs. J. Kalachelvi, MSc Nursing and MPhil, and who is an eminent person, always visionary in nursing growth, and she is a motivator for all of us. She is the backbone of this program. She has started as a staff nurse in OT, and she has climbed the ladder and various positions, that is OT ward in charge and DNS, faculty, professor in College of Nursing SRI PMS. And she has taken various role administration hospital like PSG, SRH, GKNM as a deputy nursing superintendent and nursing superintendent, and presently she is working with us as a chief nurse educator and administrative coordinator. I wish her all the best.
Thank you, ma'am, for your words, kind words. Next. World Patient Safety Day. We'll move on to the subject. World Patient Safety Day is observed annually on 17th September to raise the global awareness about patient safety and call for solidarity to reduce patient harm. Patient safety remains one of the core indicators for estimating quality and level of healthcare services globally. The patient safety, what nurse can do. So this is the topic which we are going to present today. Our Florence Nightingale, our pioneer in nursing, she has given a quote: the very first requirement in a hospital is that it should do the sick no harm. Next. Why patient safety is so important? The first principle in healthcare service is first do no harm. Even the Hippocrates oath says never do harm. With the advancement of medical technology in last few decades, patient care processes have become more complex. Patient care requires optimum coordination between healthcare providers, technology, drugs, work practices, etc. This makes the modern hospitals one of the most vulnerable and high-risk place, prone for making mistakes that may result in death or serious injuries to patients whom it is supposed to care. In India, regarding medical errors, it is estimated that around 5.2 million injuries occur due to the medical errors, resulting in around 3 million preventable deaths every year. For every 100 hospitalization average, 12.7 adverse events occur. It has been estimated that there is 1 in 100 million chance of nuclear power plant accident and 1 in 10 million chance of airline crash, while the preventable hospital death, the chances are 1 in 300. This shows the vulnerability of the patients in hospitals. So we can compare the magnitude of preventable safety risks. Coming to the definition, patient safety is the absence of preventable harm to patients and prevention of unnecessary harm by healthcare professionals. So when a patient is punctured 5 times for IV cannulation, so it is a harm to the patient. Why the patient has to undergo 5 punctures for IV cannulation? Instead, either I should improve my skill or a skilled person has to do the procedure. So this is a harm which can be prevented. This is a small example for the harm which can be prevented. It has been reported that unsafe care is responsible for the loss of 64 million disability adjusted life years each year across the globe. So what patient safety improvements demands? So patient safety improvements demands performance in improvement, environmental safety and risk management, infection control practices, safe use of medications, equipment safety, safe clinical practices. So what nurse can do? So the nurse's role. Nurses play a critically important role in ensuring the patient safety while providing care directly to the patients. So nurses are with the patients 24/7, and nurses are interacting with the physicians, families, and all other members of the healthcare team, and are crucial to timely coordination and communication of the patient's condition to the team. Yes. From a patient safety perspective, what the nurse's role is: first, monitoring the patients for clinical deterioration, detecting errors and near misses, understanding the care processes and weaknesses inherent in some systems, identifying and communicating changes in patients' condition, performing countless other tasks to ensure patients receive high quality care. If we see, the nurses' working conditions are also is related to patient safety. So what are some of the nurses' working conditions? First one is interruptions. If you see interruptions, a nurse is administering medication for a patient. So she is interrupted in between for a phone call, 2-3 times the nurse is interrupted. So there is chance for her to make error during that time for drug administration. Equipment failures. If the equipment is not functioning, or sudden failure of the equipment, or the side rail is suddenly broken, or if the BP apparatus is not working, monitor is not working. So this may interfere with the nurse's ability to safely and effectively perform such tasks. Fatigue. Fatigue also is will be resulting in inattention. If you ask a staff nurse what she says, especially in the COVID areas, nurses posted in the COVID areas, ma'am, 2 hours, after 2 hours, we are getting so tired. So this is what the nurses answers, especially in the COVID areas. So that also is related to the working condition, which is to the patient safety. Next, transformational leadership. Personal accountability, teamwork, staffing ratios, and practice environment also have the relevance to patient safety. Missed nursing care. Missed nursing care is a phenomenon of omission that occurs when the right action is delayed, is partially completed, or cannot be performed. If insulin is administered 1 hour later instead of 8 o'clock, if the insulin is administered 9 o'clock, means it results in the harm for the patient. According to the statement by the American Nurses Association, the nurse staffing ratios and the patient safety document an increased risk of patient safety. Next. What are the types of patient safety? There are n number of patient safety types. One is medical safety, surgical safety, electrical safety, laboratory safety, sanitation and infection control, biomedical, blood safety, equipment safety, and environmental safety are some of the types. Next. What are some of the international patient safety goals? These goals will be discussed by our speakers, but I want to list out these goals. One is identify patients correctly, improve staff communication, using medication safely, use alarms safely. When you are telling use alarms safely, alarms are not switched off. I just want to highlight here, alarms are not switched off when it is alarming. And apart from the machinery alarms, I want to make the nurses understand you should be careful when your mind is alarmed. For example, a patient with patient on anticoagulants, if you see a patient's passing is hematuria, that should alarm your mind. So in each and every practices, when the patient is not alert, patient who was alert in the morning, after some time, if the patient is not alert, so that should alarm your mind. So whatever is alarming your mind regarding the patients, that you and prevent mistakes in surgery. So with this, we'll move on to the presenters. First, about the presenters, a short brief about the presenters. The presenters are the nurses who are the real warriors in the field. They will explain their views and experiences in their related areas regarding patient safety. I would like to introduce the first presenter, Mrs. Christy Babuji. She started her career as a staff nurse in the Department of Cardiothoracic Unit. Her total years of experience is 28 years. She had training on BLS, ACLS, American Heart Association, and CALS in-house training. Observationship in Mayo Clinic, USA, and she has she's an internal counselor program on NABH standards, and she also had training in soft skill training. She has awarded many awards. Best Nurse Award for 3 times, Distinguished Service Award once, Best Slogan Award. She is a member in the Pediatric Cardiac Society of India Scientific Committee member, one of the member of the heart transplant team. She was a team leader for an international quality control project on reduction of a reintubation rate and a good outcome along with the Mayo Clinic, USA. And she has conducted many conferences, workshops, seminars, etc. Presently, she is in charge of the cardiothoracic unit, intensive care unit, cardiothoracic intensive care unit. Over to Christy. I welcome you for the presentation.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Thanks for the wonderful intro. A very good afternoon, everyone. I would like to share with you all about the safety of the patient in cardiothoracic ICU. So day in and day out, we have lot of safety factors we nurse need to focus upon. Let me try to narrate a case scenario and highlight patient safety measures so as we being nurses, we can emphasize with the role of a nurse how safe is an ICU for a patient recovery. A case of CABG into 3 plus MBR was received from OT with IABP and pacing support. Cardiac monitor and ventilator was connected, ICD bottles and urometer were placed properly. Alarm range was set. Never practice leaving alarm in the silent mode. Hope Kalichelvi ma'am was giving a very good, wonderful explanation about switching off the alarm modes. Why is it so important? Because when you put off the alarm mode, troubleshooting can be missed, leading to a troublesome situation. As we had another patient with a similar name, we highlighted the name alert on the case sheet, ICU flow chart, and on the patient detail board. On account of patient safety, I have maintained the confidentiality of patient details, and that's why I have blurred the patient's data. Being ICU nurse, we know how important it is to care for a patient with ICD. Despite of all the usual concerns on ICD, few key points like if you see any air leak in the ICD bottle, check for the right connection or loose connections in that particular bottle and to the opposite ICD drains as well. At times, drains remain intact and the dressings are so secure, but the ICD might get slipped off. The eye of the drain tube may get slipped off and lie subcutaneously, but we'll not be knowing that, and this will lead to a subcutaneous emphysema. Try to defer connecting NIV to the patient as situation might get worsened. The other aspect where the nurse miss is that while changing the drains, if we forget to declamp the drains, patient might develop tension pneumothorax. We received a patient with multiple inotropes, and so lines were secured and labeled so as in case of emergency, drug can be pushed through the right port in time. As ICU nurses, again, we focus much on patient care, and as ma'am was telling earlier, at times we pay less attention to the hanging IV line extensions. If these tangle lines are not secured properly, there are chances of IV line being pulled out or it might get disconnected, resulting to a breach in infection control practices, and patient can land up with unstable hemodynamics. Most of our syringe regarding environmental and electrical safety, we needed additional electrical extension points, and so extension box was used. Care was taken to place it free from fluid spillage, and by fixing the power cords, if there are any loose connections or they are not fixed properly, it can lead to electrocution, short circuits, or even fire hazards. Care was taken to maintain the ICU decibel within the normal level at all times. Alarm sounds and our conversation might seem normal for you and me, that is for everybody, healthcare workers, but however, noise levels are associated with negative impact on patients' stay and may contribute to ICU psychosis. We never entertain blame game, instead we enhance just culture. Hope all of us are aware it is nothing but checking what went wrong rather than asking who caused the problem. I agree all of us will admit just culture causes a major impact on patient safety. Now the arterial line was labeled to prevent administration of drugs through it by mistake, and pressure bag was kept inflated at 250 to 300 mm of Hg to maintain the line patency. Having SpO2 probe in the limb with the arterial line, the pleth gives us an indirect clue that how good is the perfusion to the limb with the arterial line, and this helps in the safety of the patient in early recognition of ischemia if any. After settling the patient, blood sample was drawn for ABG analysis and to check the hemoglobin level. While drawing blood, we follow closed system sampling method, and this prevents infection to the patient. And here our infection control nurses take up a major role because they keep coming rounds and rounds checking for the infection control practices if there is any breach in that. An adequate amount of blood was aspirated gently through the arterial line just near to the transducer. If you ask me, does the amount of blood aspiration in the arterial line matters with the safety of the patient? Then the answer is absolutely yes. If not, it can give a low HP level due to hemodilution. If the sample is drawn vigorously, sample might get lysed, or we can even get a hyperkalemia in the report. And again, we'll be having multiple calls from the labs, and then the lab people will be behind us asking for a repeat sample. So care should be taken on that. First post-op day, patient was stable, and we were able to switch off his pacemaker as his own rate was good. And so plan was to be in one of the inotrope, extubate, and then to be in the other inotrope. Regarding patient safety aspect, if the patient is pacing dependent, arterial line should never ever get damped. Because, for example, if the patient's set heart rate in the pacemaker is 80 per minute, with the intrinsic heart rate being only 30 to 35 and the arterial line is not working good enough, then the original drop in BP cannot be monitored and patient can have a sudden crash. So care must be taken to maintain the arterial line patency, especially when the patient is pacing dependent. When you see any artifact, immediately check if it is an artifact or an arrhythmia. The simplest form of understanding is if it is an artifact, other tracing will be normal or it will be regular. I hope you can make out with the first monitor. See, if you look at the monitor, the ECG looks pristine, whereas down next to the first ECG lead, you can see a lot of disturbance. You should not misinterpret it as arrhythmias, because you can look at the other wave tracings are pretty good. When there is an arrhythmia, for example, a fine wave can be misinterpreted as an asystole. Now, how does this matter with the patient safety? As we all know, VF is a shockable rhythm, whereas an asystole is a non-shockable rhythm. Again, during resuscitation, care to be taken to check if the ECG leads are intact throughout resuscitation. Cross-check invasive and non-invasive BP during each shift. Care must be taken to place the transducer at the phlebostatic axis at all times to maintain the accuracy of blood pressure. If not, there will be a breach in patient safety treating the wrong numbers. While reducing the inotropes, do not look at the BP alone. We must track the trend, the patient's heart rate, urine output, peripheral pulse, and the temperature. If it is not good, then stop reducing the inotropes further and check with the doctor and make sure you ask the doctor, sir, if I want to reduce it further, or what would you suggest? We need to be empowered in escalating as patient's cardiac output is getting compromised, and this reflects on patient safety. So as I was telling you earlier, as per the plan, on first post-op day, patient was extubated. While connecting O2 flow meter to the O2 point, care must be taken to completely close the O2 flow meter knob before connecting to the central O2 key and then to on the O2. If not, there are chances for the O2 flow meter getting bursted. Kind attention to all the novice nurses, beginners, please make sure, keep this in mind. So hope you can make out the crack in it, and I guess definitely few nurses would have come across such situation. On day 2, plan was to wean off the IABB having one inotrope ongoing. While weaning off the IABB, the augmentation we reduced from 80% to 60% and the frequency from 1:1 to 1:2. So by afternoon, patient was feeling sweating and he was asking for a fan. Although patient is in ICU with AC and asking for a fan is not at all a good sign, because this indicates his cardiac workload is high. So plan on IABB weaning was withheld and inotrope was stepped up and continued. When patient is on IABB, pedal pulse must be checked without fail during each shift. For example, if the IABB is in the right femoral artery and if the pedal pulse is absent in the leg and the leg is cold and discolored, then escalate to the doctor immediately, as patient may end up with limb ischemia. Blood in the balloon is also troubleshooting. This indicates that the IABB, that is the balloon, had ruptured, so immediately escalate and plan to remove the balloon at the earliest. On day 3, IABB was weaned and removed with a single ongoing inotrope. ICD drains were removed. And talking about patient safety aspect, post removal of drains, if the patient saturation drops or if the patient complains of pain and sweating, do not stop addressing his pain alone. Notify to the doctor. Auscultate patient's chest. If needed, get an X-ray done to rule out pneumothorax. Here, I would like to make a mention that one of our ICU nurse picked up pneumothorax in a pediatric case and reported immediately. So ICD was inserted on time, and this prevented the baby from getting reintubated and even saved the child from getting crashed. And our ICU nurse were appreciated for her presence of mind and acting upon it on time. On day 4, patient was shifted to ward and went home well. Here again about patient safety, if we are sending the patient to ward with the ICD bag, clear instructions must be given to the ward staff regarding care of ICD bag. Because while emptying the Euro bag, by mistake ICD bag can be emptied and left without refilling it with water. And I'm sure all of us know how water plays an important role in the ICD. In spite of all the above views of patient safety in an ICU, in case if we receive a patient with open chest from the OT, we need to know the indication for open chest, punches and gas count in the chest, And we have a dedicated blood storage cabinet in our ICU where we have adequate blood backup for urgent need. While connecting suction to the drain, here we should not only look at the suction pressure but should also look at the vacuum effect on the chest wound, especially when the patient that we have received from the ORS with open chest. Check for the readiness of re-exploration bundle and defibrillator with the internal paddle by the bedside. And I hope I have given a bird's eye view about patient safety in cardiothoracic ICU. There are a lot of other factors contributing to patient's safety as well, but due to time constraints, I'm just stopping it over here. And this picture depicts like, although we nurses do multitasking, but patient safety matters. I would like to end my talk with Can I continue? Thank you. So I would like to end my quote again. Maybe it is God's will that we have to go through this again and again. You treat a disease, you win, you lose. You treat a person, I guarantee you, you will win no matter whatever the outcome. A small take-home message to all the nurses: no matter whichever institution or department you work, at the end of the day, our conscience and job satisfaction matters. Thank you. So we are happy to take up your questions at the end of the session. Hope I have done my job to the best.
Thank you, Mrs. Christie. You treat the disease, you win or lose, no matter what the outcome is. These words are coming from your heart, Christie?
Oh, sure, ma'am, definitely yes.
Thank you. How many hearts you have touched with your care? Can you answer?
More than 10,000 maybe.
My God. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next topic. Another important area where each and every step is a safety challenge. It is the operation theatre. I call upon Mrs. Bhuvaneshwari, who will brief out the safety culture in the operation theatre. Mrs. Bhuvaneshwari. She started her career as a staff nurse in GKNM Hospital in the operation theatre and also in abroad, Malaysia. She has completed nurse officer in-house course, passed out MSc Psychology in Bardiyar University. Her total years of experience is 20 years. Presently, she is in charge nurse operation theatres. I welcome Mrs. Bhuvaneshwari to present the topic. Over to you, Bhuvaneshwari.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon to everyone. Now we all gathered here to discuss and share our views and experience regarding patient safety. I am going to focus on operation theatre. Let me start with small intro. The World Health Organization published the World Health Safety Checklist and implemented the manual in 2008. It mainly to increase the safety of the undergoing surgery. What do you mean by safety checklist? That is nothing but communication tool. That is communication tool that used for the operation room professionals like nurses, surgeons, anesthetists, and other medical team members to discuss the important detail regarding the surgical cases. Why this safety is important? Mainly to prevent and reduce the risk, error, and harm that mainly for the patient during the time of care we given in the hospital. Our total commitment is safety for me, for you, and for all. Now I am going to focus on operation theatre. Guys, you all know who is this? Yeah, her name is Sridevi. Her mother underwent surgery craniotomy in hospital in USA. Instead of left, they operated right side. It's a major surgical error. How to avoid this surgical error? To prevent and reduce the risk harm that occurred to the patient during this time, we have to use the surgical checklist. This is our hospital checklist. We are using the surgery patients. Next. How to run this checklist? Designated person is responsible for checking the faces. Who is that designated person? Circulatory nurse, scrub nurse, anesthetist, and surgeon is the responsible for circulating, checking the checklist. There are 3 phases we have to face. Phase 1 is sign in, that is period before induction. Phase 2 is sign out, time out, that is period after induction and before surgical incision. Phase 3 is sign out, period after wound closure, but before shifting the patient to post-op ward. Now we will see phase 1, that is period before induction. In this, we have to be careful. Each phase we have to face, the reading person is to be loud and clear. Now we will see this phase. In this phase, 2 persons is very, very important. The preoperative nurse and the anesthetist is the responsible person to face this phase. The preoperative nurse have to communicate with the patient with the use of tools. That means aider, ISBAR, and STAR. Then we have to mark the surgical site marking. In our hospital, we used to mark the surgical site marking with a downward arrow. Then as a preoperative nurse, we have to verify whether patient having any allergy or not. And also we have to check whether biohazard done or not. Everything has to notify in this preoperative period itself. In pre-op room itself. Anesthetist, they have to assess the level of pattern. That means anesthesia assessment pattern they have to check, and also they have to check if major case is there. They have to verify whether blood has been reserved or not. Once finished, the anesthetist is have to sign in the phase 1 checklist. Next, we have to move on to next phase 2, that is period after induction and before surgical incision. In this phase, the surgeon, anesthetist, circulatory nurse, and the scrub nurse is responsible to handle this phase. They have to introduce themselves by their name and role. Then next, they have to verify the patient name, procedure, site, position, or planned. Next, they have to verify the patient name with the ID card. That means in ID band, we have to check the patient name and OP number with evidence with any one of the team members. And also have to check the concern also. Next, coming to the anesthetist part, they have to check the major concern is there or not. And also they have to mention ASA grade for the what is the ASA grade. Next, coming to the OT nurse, it's an important part in our place. That is, we have to play a major role in this part. We have to verify the sterility of the instrument as well as equipment concern or not. Then SSI bundles, which includes antibiotic policy, prophylactic antibiotic policy, we have to administer before 1 hour before surgery. Then we have to check the glycemic control on the day of surgery. Then verify the diathermy pad, whether placed in a correct position or not. Then we have to check the DVT prophylaxis. That means whether patient wearing the stockings or low molecular injections, whether administered as per the doctor's order. Then if major case, we have to check whether MRI images or CT images is there. We have to display it in the X-ray lobby. Next, we can move to phase 2. In this phase, that is sign out. Before the team members leaves the OT, we have to read out this phase 2. We have to mention the name of the procedure has been recorded or not. If not recorded, immediately have to record it. Then specimens has to be labeled and soaked in the formalin immediately. If no specimen, we have to mention there no. And also equipment issue is there, we have to address immediately. This one mainly to prevent further issues in the next surgeries. Then if any drain, bilateral ICDs are there, if any packing be done for that patient, means we have to mention in this checklist. Then only the post-operative nurse will be aware for this. Once everything over, the surgeon, anesthetist, and OT nurse, if any key concern for the recovery management means have to mention in this checklist. Everything finished, the circulatory nurse have to sign and write her employee number. In this phase, next. In this phase, everybody know this film, I think so. It is a Kamala Hassan film. In this film, it is a cinema, but in real, it may be real in the cinema, but in real, it's a tragedy both for the patient as well as the hospital. That means they missed out the watch inside the abdomen. That is the thing, but here we are not doing that, but still it's a joke. That's next we can move on to protocol for sponge count. Mainly the scrub nurse and the circulatory nurse is in important role in this sponge count. Scrub nurse, she have to keep the sponges, gauze, peanut, and other small materials keeps away from the instrument table, and she should not receive the specimen or send the specimen in the sponges. Soil sponges are to discarded in the bucket, as well as the sterile sponges should be kept separate in the sterile field. When required, the sponges to be used in the surgical field. Next. The prior to the procedure, during the procedure, and before closing and final count to be performed by the end of the procedure, the counts should be cross-checked by the circulatory nurse. The scrub nurse is the important person. It starts from the procedure till the end. She is to be alert for the entire procedure. Next to the circulatory nurse. Once the cross-check by the circulatory nurse, with the scrub nurse, she have to record in the count board, and additional counts also to be recorded in the count board. Already we saw in the scrub nurse protocol, same like the circulatory nurse protocol also, during the procedure, before closing, and the final count to be performed at the end of the procedure. Cross-checked by the scrub nurse. Amount of the blood loss should be calculated by the circulatory nurse and give information to the surgeon and the anesthetist. This is our pre and post-op checklist view. Our main focus of our point is to prevent the team from progressing to the next phase of the operation until each step is completed. Without completion of the step, we should not move on to other phase. Mainly, we can avoid the major and minor issues. WHO checklist purpose is mainly identify patient correctly in the ID band to confirm the patient name and OP number, improve the staff communication with patient, mainly can use aided ISBAR and STAR tools, use medication safely, prevent infection by using these all bundles, prevent mistakes in surgery, correct patient, correct site, and correct surgery. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
That is wonderful, Bhuneshwari. You have explained the safety measures in the OT in detail. So you said it may look comedy in the real, but in real, it is a tragedy to patient as well as to the hospital. Yes, it's real. We have to be more careful in the theater in all the aspects. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next, we'll move on to the next presentation. Before going for the next presentation, I ask all the presenters to keep up the timings. Do not exceed your timings. I want to quote a scientist's verses recently. It may be a foretelling also. So the quote is, it is this generation who are going to see their children die with the disease. Yes, it is not only the disease, but also the treatment and procedures are also have safety challenges. The topic is mitigation of patient safety risks in oncology. The presenter is Mrs. Helen Elizabeth. She was a staff nurse in GKNM Hospital. She continued her service abroad as staff nurse and she has completed post-basic BSc nursing. Her total years of experience is 27 years and mainly in oncology department. Presently, she is in charge of oncology ward. I welcome Mrs. Helen Elizabeth to present her topic.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. Let me highlight few things regarding patient safety in oncology patients. That is, prevention of extravasation while administering chemotherapy drugs and prevention of infection in neutropenic patients. So let us see what is extravasation. Extravasation is an inadvertent administration of vesicant solution into the tissue. Extravasation related to puncture of the distal wall, mechanical friction, and dislodgement of the catheter. So let's see what is the difference between infiltration and extravasation. Infiltration means leakage of non-vesicant solution into the surrounding tissue, and extravasation means leakage of vesicant solution into the surrounding tissue. What is vesicant? Vesicants are the drugs that can cause tissue necrosis or formation of blisters when accidentally infused into the surrounding vein. So the first sign is often subtle. We may miss the first mild redness there. So this may become mild blotchy redness and swelling or change in infusion rate. So the first thing what we have to do is we have to stop the infusion. And in our hospital, we have extravasation kit as well as we have the protocol what we have to do for each chemo extravasation protocols, so that we follow. So once if it is not treated, within days, it becomes brawny discoloration, induration, dry desquamation, blistering with discomfort and or pain. So how we will prevent extravasation? So in that, the first thing is competent insertion. So when we are selecting a vein, it is important to select a vein which are not thrombosed, inflamed, bruised and hard. So when we are selecting a vein, we have to start, we should not start near bony prominence, joints, near site of infection, site of previous surgeries, and the site where mastectomy is done. So where we can start, the preferred sites are distal metacarpal veins found in the dorsum of ant and cephalic and basilic vein found in the arm. So the next is select a small gauge catheter. We usually use 22 gauge catheter. After pricking, we are not supposed to probe for a vein. So during the infusion, we have to observe the site for erythema or edema. After infusion of each chemo drug, we have to flush the catheter as well as the tubing with 0.9% normal saline. We have to check the patency frequently. So proper dilution of the drug also plays an important role before infusion or injection. So the next one is prevention of infection in neutropenic patients. So what is neutropenia? Neutropenia is defined as an absolute neutrophil count of less than 1500 cells per cubic millimeter. The risk of infection increases with the severity and duration of neutropenia. Neutropenia sepsis is the most common hematological emergency and can be fatal. Early diagnosis and prompt antibiotic treatment can prevent death. So, definition of fever in febrile neutropenia. Fever in neutropenia, we call it as a febrile neutropenia. When there is a single oral temperature is more than or equal to 101 degree Fahrenheit, or on 2 occasions separated by 1 hour, it is more than 38 degrees centigrade or equal to 38 degrees centigrade. So how we will calculate absolute neutrophil count? Total WBC into percentage of neutrophils divided by 100. It gives absolute neutrophil count. There are different types of neutropenia. So according to the absolute neutrophil count, we divide normal is when ANC count is 1500 to 8000 cells. Neutropenia we call when it is less than 1500 cells, and mild neutropenia 1000 to 1500 cells, moderate neutropenia 500 to 999 cells, severe neutropenia less than 500 cells, and profound neutropenia less than 100 cells. So the infections, there are some common signs of infection in neutropenic patients are pyrexia, rigor or other signs of fever, signs of infection. In pyrexia, when the temperature is more than on a single reading or more than 38 on 2 readings in 1 hour apart. Rigor or other signs of fever, it's associated with cold, sweating and shivering. Signs of infection, sore throat, cough, urinary symptoms and skin lesions. So what all a nurse should do in daily assessment? So we have to check the patient whether the patient is having sore throat. Then we have to look for skin breakdown and skin lesions like this, and skin rashes, hematuria, and changes in bowel movements. And we have to check for perianal infection. So, and also we have to check the intravenous sites are clean and there is no signs of infection. So what are the general guidelines for an inpatient? Next. We have to avoid infection by reducing crowd. We should keep the patient in a single room with one attender only. And the room should be cleaned thrice a day. And careful hand washing. We have to follow 5 moments of hand washing and also steps of hand washing. And do not place fresh flowers and plants in patient's room. And only food which is supplied from hospital in disposable container is accepted. In this, we should not give any raw vegetables to the patient. Fresh fruits with skin, that is like banana, orange, pomegranate, which has a skin. So we can peel the skin and eat. So like that, fruits are given, and full boiled food items is allowed, and we should not give any oily and fried items. So we have to ask the patient to take shower daily. And in conclusion, febrile neutropenia is a serious complication of chemotherapy. Be vigilant. Febrile neutropenia in chemotherapy patients. Be vigilant for infection even when there is no fever. Initiate empiric antibiotics immediately.
Thank you, Helen. Your presentation is really wonderful. You have brought the real picture of the patient and how carefully the patient needs to be taken care of. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Announcement. Patient safety, what nurse can do. So this is the topic for today. So you have to give an answer for the question, what nurse can do in one sentence. That is, what nurse can do. You have to give the answer in one sentence and put the answer in the chat box, and that will be read in the end of the session. Next, we'll move on to the next presentation. The theme for the World Patient Safety Day this year is Safe Maternal and Newborn Care. The next will do the presentation on maternal and newborn care. Miss Sheba, she is a staff nurse in labor theatre. She has 11 years of experience in the labor theatre. She is well committed. Over to you, Sheba, to do the presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to discuss about maternal and newborn safety. Healthy mother, healthy child are the healthy society. Introduction. Motherhood is the most important position a woman can have in her life, but can be a life-threatening as well as a time. Pregnancy and childbirth are normal physiological process. Reducing the risk in maternity service and ensuring the provision of safe care to mother and the baby is the priority. It identifies the key area for improvement in maternity service. More than 1/3 of maternity deaths, half of stillbirth, and quarter of neonatal deaths result for complication during labor and childbirth. Improving the quality of care around the time of birth has been identified as the most impactful strategies for reducing the child stillbirth, maternal and neonatal death, comparing with antenatal or postnatal care strategies. Maternal and fetal care model, which we have followed here, identifying and triaging the mother in the labor, maternal monitoring by using NewsChat, and the labor monitoring and documenting, identifying the triggers and intervening accordingly, monitoring the mother and fetus during the induction of labor, appropriate titration of the syntocin, monitoring the fetal heart rate using fetal Doppler or CTG, continuing monitoring and care during second and third stage, postnatal care of mother and the baby. It's a triaging, identifying and triaging of mother in labor. There are 3 categories, that is red zone, yellow zone, and green zone. Red zone is the mother who are in critical care, critical condition, where she needs a critical care in emergency. The yellow zone is the mother in a critical care with non-emergency situations. And the green is the mother with a generalized complaint for normal labor. Maternal monitoring by using NewsChat. Modified early obstetric warning score is the NewsChat. All pregnant women in labor theatre should have their observation recorded on NewsChat. The minimum frequency of the observation has in patient is 6th hourly and in labor 2nd hourly if no trigger. Interpartum care observation should be recorded on NewsChat. This is the NewsChat which we followed in a labor room. The modifying early obstetric warning score. It has temperature, BP, heart rate, respiration, and SpO2. And the next page is consist of if a mother is a diabetic or a mother is an eclamptic, her urine protein and urine ketones are being monitored. If mother has a rupture of membrane, the color of the liquor is also being monitored, and a neurological response is also monitored by alert pain, and unresponsive voice and unresponsive are monitored. If they're identifying the trigger and intervening accordingly, trigger 1 or more reading on the red or 2 or more reading on the yellow, it to be escalated to the duty doctor. It is for increasing the monitoring interval in 15 minutes. If the saturation is less, the O2 can be administered to the mother as per 5 liters per minute, or positioning the mother to tilting her at 15 to 30 degrees. Or if it is necessary, the CTG are to be connected. If lab reports are ready, if all interventions are taken, if no response, so we can take for another further interventions. This is the CTG monitored. Yes, this is a CTG which has we are monitored here. The CTG is nothing but it's a cardiotocography. It has the fetal heart rate and the maternal heart rate and also the contraction. Every nurse should have the knowledge about the CTG, whether the CTG has good variability, the acceleration of the CTG and the deceleration in it, so that if any variations in CTG, that she can escalate to the duty doctors and accordingly the interventions can be taken. And the contraction is also being monitored in the CTG. Postnatal care, mother and baby. Mother is monitored for any deterioration. PPH has been monitored. In involution of the uterus. For baby, airway management to keep neopuff ready. Thermoregulation. For baby, the heart rate, respiratory rate, SpO2, the color of the baby and the activity of the baby is also being monitored. If mother is a diabetic, baby's blood sugar level is also being monitored. Administer the vitamin K as early as possible. The breastfeeding is to be initiated. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shiba, for your presentation. Next, we'll move on to the next presentation. High-risk newborn rates are increasing nowadays. One among is preterm babies. Preterm babies are very vulnerable. Nurse has to take care of babies with 750 grams or even less than that for survival. Their gestational age itself is a risk. They need supportive care for everything. Yes, here is our presenter, Mrs. Sudha, to highlight some of the safety measures which has to be strictly followed in the newborn intensive care unit. Mrs. Subha, 23 years, not her age, but the experience in the Department of Pediatrics, including NICU. Training underwent in-house post-basic specialty training in obstetrics and neonatology. Some of the awards like Best Nurse Award, Performance Excellence Award, and she's a trainer for NALS, Neonatal Advanced Life Support. I invite Mrs. Subha for the presentation. Over to you, Subha.
Thank you, ma'am. Going to discuss about safety first in NICU. Introduction. Babies in the NICU are very small and fragile. Many with immature organ systems, especially preterm babies, and are with serious illnesses. These infants are likely to receive complex care, procedures, and treatment. Because of their narrow margin of safety and because of their unique vulnerability, even minor errors can lead to major safety threats. Domains of errors related to thermoregulation, respiratory support, medication and total parenteral nutrition, patient identification, invasive and non-invasive procedure, infections and nutrition. Safety concerns related to thermoregulation, hypothermia, dehydration. Safety measures starts in the labor room itself. Receive newborn baby in a pre-warmed sheet and pre-warmed warmer. Dry and wrap the child. An early initiation of breastfeed. Attach the skin probe below the sternum and sensor must be placed in contact with the skin. Secure with extra thin plaster. In NICU environment, use preheated warmer and maintain thermoneutral environment. Secure the skin probe properly and check the manual temperature of the baby. Use the clear tenting with bubble wrap to prevent insensible water loss for premature child and cover the head with cap. Respiratory support. Babies may be on ventilator support, CPAP, HFNC, and oxygen support through hood and cannula. Safety measures for respiratory support, vigilant monitoring of oxygen administration. Alarms, apnea alarm, tube obstruction alarm, circuit leak alarm, humidification alarm, and attend the alarm immediately. Do not attempt to silence the alarm. Monitor for complications, DOPE, displacement of the ET tube and obstruction in the ET tube and ventilator circuit kink, pneumothorax and equipment failure. Increased oxygen administration is a complication of preterm baby to develop ROP. Retinopathy of prematurity is the damage of retinal blood vessels of the eye of premature baby due to the supplemental oxygen administration to the baby. Safety measures for prevention of ROP, wean off oxygen as quickly as possible and judicious administration of oxygen, maintain saturation level between 88 to 92%, ROP screening for less than 34 weeks and below 1.5 kgs, and use of low flow oxygen meter. This low flow oxygen meter can deliver oxygen as low as 0.1 liter per minute. Counseling the parents about the strict follow for eye checkup. Safety measures to prevent infection. Follow hand hygiene, strict aseptic precaution for all sterile procedures, and limit blood drawing and sugar monitoring, especially for preterm child. Use lubricants while removing plaster to prevent skin excoriation, and healthcare worker and attendant should be infection-free while entering NICU and wash hands before entering NICU. Environment and equipment cleaning, and follow isolation practices. Separate nurses should be assigned for sepsis babies and separate the baby in isolation room, and follow CLABSI and WAP bundles and surveillance audit. NAC is a complication due to nutrition. Preterm babies who are fed with formula feed and tube feed are prone to develop NEC. Safety measures and prevention. Exclusive feeding of human milk and follow standardized feeding regimen in NICU. Yearly feeding within 24 hours and pasteurized human donor milk. When mother is not able to express milk, use pasteurized human donor milk and achieve full feed within 1 week. Safety measures in NICU environment. Touch. Mother and baby bonding can be improved by giving kangaroo mother caps. Sound environment. Sound level not to exceed in NICU, not to exceed 50 to 70 decibels. Minimize alarm sounds. Use of vacuum cleaners at low sound level. Restrict noise levels in NICU and restrict dragging of equipments. Positioning. Change the position of the baby to prevent pressure ulcer. Developmental care. Follow for ROP screening, hearing test, and thyroid screening. Neurological follow-up for birth asphyxia and neurological disorder babies. Analgesia. Babies on ventilator should be under adequate sedation. Babies delivered by forceps and vacuum should receive adequate pain management. Newborn babies should be assessed for pain by using NIP scale. Handling. Babies must be handled with care. Minimal handling, especially for preterm babies. Babies should not be disturbed often and follow cluster care. Light environment. Eyes must be covered when babies on phototherapy. Dim light to prevent sleep disturbances. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Mrs. Subha. You have highlighted how a preterm baby can be taken care of. I just want to ask you a question. How many preterm babies you have taken care in your experience?
Not countable, ma'am. More than 1,000 and 1,000, ma'am.
That's good. That shows your experience. Yes, thank you, Shubha. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the next topic. Not only newborn, all children are vulnerable. Children brought to the doorstep, that is ER, are to be identified and taken care. Delay in identifying the problem, even in seconds, is at risk. Now comes the next presenter, Manjula Kumari. She has completed her nursing in 1996 and did her post-basic in 2007. She has 21 years of experience in the pediatric department. She has also completed a certificate course in early intervention of developmentally challenged children. Her areas of expertise are pediatric ward, NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, pediatric OPD, emergency room, including vaccination, and she has been awarded with Meritorious Service Award. I call upon Mrs. Manjula Kumari to give the presentation. Over to you, Manjula.
Good afternoon, friends. Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction and the opportunity to share my views on child safety in the hospital. Child safety means preventing any form of harm to the children caused directly by the healthcare system itself. The responsibility of nurse to meet the safety challenges is a continuous process. So areas where the nurse should ensure the safety of the children are emergency room, during hospital stay, at discharge, at home, till follow. So these are the qualities of a nurse. She should contribute to ensure the patient safety, that is critical thinking and observation skill, decision making skill, care organizing, and communication and judgment ability. So what are the safety challenges we would expect at emergency room? They are patient identification, triaging and assessment, methodological and scientific approach, application of knowledge, and timely management. So patient identification is the main safety issue that can happen at anywhere. That can be mainly done by name of the child and by checking the unique ID number of the child. So this is the triage and assessment tool. It is a very good safety tool which helps the nurse to identify and categorize the sick children according to their need and health condition by looking at their appearance, breathing, and circulation. The emergency management is carried out according to the color zone under which the child is coming. If the child could use this triage tool properly, she can save the child from further complication and the escalation of further care is being carried out. So to identify the sick child among the normal children is a very essential observation skill of the nurse. For example, a child with TOF, that is tetralogy of Fallot, brought to the ER with the cyanotic spell, the nurse could able to understand the emergency, and she should initiate prioritized list of management to save the child. And the prioritized list of the care, that will be need-chase position, and calm the child, oxygen administration, and sedation as per doctor's order. If she fails to follow this care immediately, then the child's safety is compromised and we may lose the child also. So vaccination room, in most of the hospitals, the vaccination room is attached with the pediatric OPD itself. So the nurse who is posted in the vaccination room should render her technical skill in the specialist area like vaccination room. So she should follow the cold chain minutes, that is the maintenance of vaccines at the recommended temperature of 2 to 8 degrees centigrade from the receiving place till the inoculation site. Then she have to adhere to the dosage to avoid overdose. For example, BCG is given 0.01 ml. This is the recommended dose. If she gives 0.1 ml instead of giving normal dose, then it means it is 10 times more than the normal dose. It means she herself is introducing the TB infection to the newborn. Then sterile injection technique to prevent abscess, infection, etc. The nerve injury, if the injection technique and site is wrong, nerve injury is the main complication that has to be prevented. So this is a slide which shows the recommended site of the vaccination, that is anterolateral aspect of this vastus lateralis muscle. Nurse should be also well trained enough to manage emergency anaphylaxis, and then emergency drugs, resuscitation trolley, oxygen supply to be near to the vaccination room. Then during stay, that is once the child gets admitted, the nurse should use the practical skill to avoid medication errors, procedural mishappenings, improper procedures, and deviation from infection control practices. The drug dose calculation and fluid calculation is the very important aspect that a pediatric nurse should be knowledgeable. The dose will be calculated as per the body weight of the child. That is done by the pediatrician, but the nurse should verify the dose, route, and the method of the administration. Care of IV cannula is very essential thing to prevent thrombophlebitis. Always follow the policy of double checking of drugs, and 2 nurses have to go for the drug administration. ID tag, of course, for all inpatients has to be tied. Pediatric nurses have to be well trained on emergency care and procedures. Then standard infection prevention practices to be followed. Then some of the precautions to ensure the safety. I have some slides on this. This is self-explanatory only. Never ever leave the child unsupported while checking weight or any other anthropometric measurements. Then put on side railings to prevent fall. Then avoid foreign body injection. That is, if the cap is as soon as the cap is removed from the injection bottle, that has to be discarded in the biomedical waste containers. So this is a slide which shows the tray contains chemical solutions that has to be placed opposite direction of the child to prevent the spillage of the chemicals into the child's face. So keep on inflating the BP cuff should be avoided. Why? Because this may cause circulatory problem to the child and ischemic pain also. So you can see the sharp edge of the IV cannula on the child. If it's not covered like this, child can self-injury to the corneal injury and face injury can happen. So the IV cannula should be always covered. Ensure safe transport, whether it is in bed or on the trolley or stretcher, the safe transport has to be ensured. Avoid accident fall of biomedical devices on the child. While the child is on the bed, the fixing of biomedical devices has to be done very carefully. Otherwise, there is a chance of accident fall of biomedical devices on the child. So my dear nurses, please note, discharge is not the end of the treatment. It is also a part of the treatment. Nurse plays a very essential role in doing when discharging the patient. She has to use the communication skill to make understand and to convey the details of discharge advice drugs. So never ever explain the prescription without drugs. Why? Because even a single drop of medicine is a dose. In pediatric drugs, even a single drop is a dose. So nurse should always, with the medicine only, she has to explain the prescription. Educate the parents about the importance of follow-up. For example, the child who underwent pyeloplasty surgery will have stent tube inside the ureter. That has to be removed after 1 month. So it is the responsibility of the nurse to give proper instruction to the parents about the importance of follow-up by giving the discharge summary. And one more example, sometimes the children with wheezing problem may be on steroid infusion therapy at home for a long days. The child have to have a regular follow-up, then only the pediatric pulmonologist can modify the dose. And at home also, the nurse's responsibility on child safety is not stops at the hospital level, and also it continues at the home level also to ensure the safety of the child from the anticipatory medical emergency at home. That is why I have told you it is a continuous process in the first slide itself. For example, if the child is a known wheezer, then the parents must be taught about the salbutamol inhalation technique to manage acute exacerbation of wheeze at home. Then, if the child is a seizure disorder child, then the parents must be taught about the anticonvulsant nasal spray during the seizure episode at home to prevent further complication before they reach to the hospital. To conclude, the nurses should be contribute their responsibility to identify the patient, safe and correct medication practices, avoid procedural and surgical errors, fall and injury prevention, infection control measures, and improve their staff communication.
Thank you, Manjula Kumari. Finished?
Finished, ma'am. No, ma, I want to tell one, safety is not a complicated thing. It is very easy as ABC. So always be careful. Safety should be our priority and quality should be our standard always. Thank you.
That's good. I would have missed this last slide. Yes, Manjula Kumari.
Yes, ma'am.
You have beautifully explained that your care is not stopped in the hospital itself and it has to be extended to the home also. Well said.
Thank you, ma'am.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next session is we are in the scientific era. Informatics has mingled in our life in everything. So as in nursing also. Patient safety and nursing informatics is the topic to be discussed. Mrs. Dhanlakshmi, her total years of experience is 27 years. She began her career as staff nurse, worked in various departments like postoperative ward, labor theatre, and intensive care unit. She has undergone 1 year in-house post-basic specialty training in OBG and neonatal nursing, and in-house training on nurse officer. She has been awarded as best nurse during the COVID period. She's an ACLS trainer. She has worked in the medical intensive care unit in JKNM Hospital and also in abroad, Malaysia. She was in charge nurse of medical intensive care unit for many years and presently as nurse informatics supervisor in JKNM Hospital. Over to you, Dhanlakshmi.
Thank you so much, Kalai ma'am, for the brief introduction. Good evening, one and all. I hope my screen is visible and our voice is audible to all. So far, we heard from the experts speaking about patient safety. Here, I would like to say a few words about what is nursing informatics, which is a new entity in the Indian nursing scenario, which is a blooming specialty, and how nursing informatics is helping in maintaining the patient safety. For your news, I would like to say our Indian Nursing Council is also added a syllabus in second year of BSc Nursing curriculum, which is coming in action in the upcoming academic year. So today we will discuss about what is nursing informatics, IT applications, what are all the IT applications available in the healthcare industry, what is electronic medical record and electronic health record, and what is the major difference between these two, and some of the advantages for the nurses who using the true EMR, and some what are all the impacts of EMR in maintaining international patient safety goal. Okay, first we will look into what is informatics, nursing informatics. Actually, it is a blooming specialty, and it is highly paid next to the nurse practitioner profession in the West. And in India, it just started to evolve, and as GKNM is a pioneer institution to institute a modern technologies and innovations. It samples in health informatics also in the field of health. So in simple words, nursing informatics is nothing but it is a mixture of information science, computer science, cognitive science, along with the nursing science. So, what are all the information and communication technological applications available in healthcare system? Number one is electronic medical records, hospital information system, intranet, public networks, health decision support, telemedicine, community health, and also health information system. Upon this, we will look in detail about electronic medical records. What is medical records? It is a digital version of paper chart. It is electronic medical records are real-time and patient-centric records that makes information available then and there with the security to the authorized users. But what is electronic health record? It is also same. It is a digital version of a paper chart, and it is a real-time and patient-centric records as in electronic medical records. But what is the major difference between these two is the interoperability and the intraoperability. What electronic medical records can do, the entries, the patient's details only will be there in the particular institution. Whereas in the electronic health records, it is shareable between the healthcare providers, and the patient, wherever he goes across the India, he will provided with a unique hospital identity number, like what we have in Aadhaar now. So when the nation goes digital with health mission, so with the unique ID, patient can get treatment wherever he goes across the nation. And the beauty of the electronic health record is without the patient consent, we cannot access to his own record. Okay, next we will see some of the capabilities of EMR. EMR is best one to capture data at the point of care. It means we can enter data at the patient's bedside, the assessment findings, what are all the diagnostic aids, and we can order investigations. And if you want to do some diagnostic procedures, all the things are possible doing at the bedside. And the next is integrating data from multiple sources. Multiple sources in the sense both internal and external sources. Internal sources means we get the data from the inside the hospital. Outside external sources in the sense we can get the data wherever the patient is. If he might be in the outdoor, the patient may be in home care, and patient may be traveling to a hospital through an ambulance. Patient may be in a remote area where the healthcare are not accessible. So we can capture from all those areas, and the data are captured with the local wireless gateway, and it is collected in the database and saved in the server, and it is available for the local practitioners to practice the health system. And the next one is it helps the support caregiver in making decisions. For physicians, it helps them to make diagnosis, prognosis, prevention of disease, and treatment. For nurses, it helps them to plan their nursing care. In EMR, if we care for the patient according to their complaints, And when for example, if a patient is having fever, the EMR will give them the drop down, what are all the possible treatment care solutions will be available. In that, nurses can choose what is feasible for her and the patient so that her time is saved. We will see some of the advantages of EMR. I have put it in the self-explanatory points. Save lives and reduces cost. Computerized physician order entry systems can reduce adverse drug reactions. Not only the adverse drug reactions, but also it reduces the medication errors, because a computerized physician order entry makes the system legible, neat, and it is easily understandable, and it is instantly reached to the caregivers, like it reaches the laboratory and reaches the pharmacist on time. So it increases the turnaround time so that the patient waiting time will be reduced. Computerized reminders will help the caregiver not to miss any care. Flags and notifications will help them to alert not to miss anything or not to do any wrong thing to the patients. So it helps the guidelines. The guidelines are very effective. Clinical IT tools can improve drug prescribing and administration. Potential to transform care delivery, offering greater quality, safety, and also efficiency. Many clinical IT benefits, such as provider convenience, patient satisfaction, and improved communication. So to explain this at the end of the session, I will show you a wonderful video to explain about what are all the healthcare advancement in the technological field. Further, it helps the nurses increase the time spending with patients, and it accesses the information all the time and instantly. It improves the quality of documentation. Also, it improves the quality of patient care. Because of the time availability, the nursing productivity is also improved. The communication and the medications errors are reduced. Communication is very much improved. Enhanced ability to track patients' record then and there. Development of common clinical database is available. Improved patient perception of care. By all this means, it improves the hospital image and it will give you a pride working in a pride hospital. Okay, now we come to the main topic, patient safety. So what is the common goal in maintaining patient safety? It is reduction and prevention of harm to patients as a result of their care. Few minutes, ma'am, I will finish it. In the healthcare facility, it is maintained by formulating organizational culture, that is nothing but formulating policies and protocols, and it has to be communicated between the personnel appropriately, and it should be monitored with the appropriate leadership, and maintaining the safety is a cycle. It is not a short-term project. It has to be done 24 hours in a day and 365 days in a year, and it is the responsibility of every individual who is working in that particular organization. So we know the international patient safety goals as discussed by the previous speakers. We'll see how the EMR help us to maintain the patient safety goals one by one. Next. So goal 1 is identifying patient correctly. At present, we will do manual identifications by calling the patient by name and checking the ID card with the case sheet. But in EMR, we have to scan the barcode which is tied in the patient's identity card. Then only your case sheet will open. So the identity will not be missed. So how this is how the identification errors are reduced. Goal 2 is improving the effectiveness of communication. Because it is in digital, it is legible and neatly available, and there is no misunderstanding of handwriting, and also it is instantly reached to the destination when they order for lab test, and when they prescribe the medication, it instantly reaches the pharmacist. So there is no intermediators.
So misinterpretations will not happen. And at present, we are using the aided. By using this aided, we increase the safety of the patient and also trust. We decrease the anxiety for them and also increase the compliance for the patient. And by all these means, it increases the loyalty between nurse and the patient. So we will have the better clinical outcomes and patient satisfaction. Next goal is improving the safety of high alert medications. So the computerized physician order entry program helps the physician. It will give them the alert when they order for high alert medication with a high alert icon. When they touch upon the icon, it will give them the pop-up showing that the instruction of the particular medications. If they order it, again it will give the pop-up. For example, in case if a clinician is ordering for colistin, which is nephrotoxic, this will the application will give the pop-up that have to check for the patient's creatinine level because it is nephrotoxic. So in case if the physician is forgetting to maintain the dosage, it will give them the alert to avoid overdose or underdosing errors. Next one is ensuring safe surgery. So this is well explained by staff Bhuvana, and we have done the digital framework of what we are following the international operation theatre checklist. By this, we are ensuring correct patient site and the procedure.
So next, we will see next goal of fifth goal, that is reducing the risks of hospital acquired infections. So in this slide, we are going to see how we are digitally going to maintain or prevent or reduce the risks of occurrence of hospital acquired infections. In this, the system will give the reminder alerts for the nurse to whether she has washed her hands, and it will remind her whether she gave the sedation holiday for a ventilated patient, or for avoiding the CAR-T, it will remind her to maintaining the lower level of urinary bag, or it will remind her that they have reviewed the necessary of the catheter. Like that, it will give the reminders for the nurse to avoid the hospital acquired infections. Whereas for infection control nurses, it will help them to collect the symptoms and criteria and patient data. And the diagnosis results, everything will collect in the e-surveillance system. It will help the infection control nurse to identify whether the patient is at no risk or low risk or mild risk or high risk. So by catching this earlier, so she can help the patient to going for sepsis and septic shock. Next goal is how to reduce the patient harms from falls. So this is nothing but, again, it gives the alert or give the flags for the nurse that this particular patient is in alert for fall. So whenever she opens the case sheet digitally, it will give the pop-up sign for the nurse that this particular patient is at the fall risk. So the nurse will give the, she will keep in her memory that this patient has to take care carefully to prevent falls. So that's all to maintaining the goals digitally. Next, what next? So we need to fill up the gap between the paper and digital. So we have to analyze the gap and fill in the gaps to go for digital completely. For that, we need not scratch from the beginning. We should do whatever we have in our hand. For this, already we have our wonderful HL7 system, LIMS and the PACS and all those things digitally already. So it is very easy for us to go complete digital. So what is next is have to achieve the goal by slow and steady. So everything is possible with the teamwork. Whatever the huge our goal is, it can be achieved by a good teamwork. So slow and steady always win the match. Thank you. Thank you for the patient listening. And over to you, Kalai ma'am. Thanks for the opportunity. And I would like to show you all a video how the future healthcare industry will be. So that will give you a rough idea how it will be in the future. Schedule the doctor's review from home itself. The doctor getting notification for the referral. For this, he need not worry for the where the patient is staying. Medication reminder gives and he is taking the medications without fee. Wait for the results. Our outpatient comes to the hospital. Wonder how the technology is. She is paying digitally without any intermediator. Blood test has been done. Paid. And the virtual flow guide her to go to the clinic. Wonderful, no? So this is the scenario in future. So there will not be any intermediators. There will not be any time lagging. Patient waiting time will be reduced, and the doctor's time also saved. So we are our visionary is like this to achieve our healthcare industry in future. So over to you, Kalai ma'am. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you. Thanks once again.
That's a wonderful presentation by Dhanlakshmi. It's the need of the era. So thank you so much, Dhanlakshmi. Now we have come to the end of the session. In the beginning, we asked, it is a question answer session. In the beginning, we have asked a question, patient safety, what nurse can do. So the answer, some of the people have given the answers, that is hand hygiene, to follow hospital policies and sustainability. Next, nurse should always be a safety alarm. So these are some of the answers given by our participants. The answer from our side is patient safety, what nurse can do. The answer is what nurse cannot do. The answer is also a question. Nurses play a pivotal role in the patient safety. Nurses should proactively anticipate risks, prevent the harm, hazards, etc. I thank once again our superiors, CNO, IT personnel for their guidance and support. I also thank all the presenters for their efforts in presenting, preparing, etc. For their efforts, even in spite of the busy schedule in the ward and taking care of the patients. Everyone behind the success are the nurse educators. Thank you, nurse educators. Thank you one and all. Have a nice day.